part of the river's floodplains, and what would otherwise have been desert has been transformed into one of the most productive farming regions in California. Other water from the river is piped to urban communities, but all this has been at the expense of river, which below the extraction sites no longer has any above-ground flow during most of the year. Another problem of growing crops in this way is the build-up of salinity in the soil caused by the evaporation of river water. 121. The greening of the desert remains an aspiration and was at one time viewed as a future means for increasing food production for the world's growing population. This prospect has proved false, as it disregarded the environmental damage caused elsewhere by the diversion of water for desert project irrigation. 122. Solar energy capture. Satellite view with solar and renewable energy potential of Sahara and Europe. Desert proposed using the Saharan and Arabian deserts to produce solar energy to power Europe and the Middle East. Deserts are increasingly seen as sources for solar energy, partly due to low amounts of cloud cover. Many solar power plants have been built in the Mojave Desert, such as the Solar Energy Generating Systems and Ivanpur Solar Power Facility. 123. Large swaths of this desert are covered in mirrors. 124. The potential for generating solar energy from the Sahara Desert is huge, the highest found on the globe. Professor David Feynman of Ben-Gurion University has stated that the technology now exists to supply all of the world's electricity needs from 10% of the Sahara Desert. 125. Desert Industrial Initiative was a consortium seeking $560 billion to invest in North African solar and wind installations over the next 40 years to supply electricity to Europe via cable lines running under the Mediterranean Sea. European interest in the Sahara Desert stems from its two aspects: the almost continual daytime sunshine and plenty of unused land. The Sahara receives more sunshine per acre than any part of Europe. The Sahara Desert also has the empty space totaling hundreds of square miles required to house fields of mirrors for solar plants. 126. The Negev Desert, Israel, and the surrounding area, including the Arava Valley, receive plenty of sunshine and are generally not arable. This has resulted in the construction of many solar plants. 106. David Feynman has proposed that giant solar plants in the Negev could supply all of Israel's needs for electricity. 125. Warfare. Battle of El Alamein. War in the Desert. Battle of El Alamein, 1942. The Arabs were probably the first organized force to conduct successful battles in the desert. By knowing back routes and the locations of oases, and by utilizing camels, Muslim Arab forces were able to successfully overcome both Roman and Persian forces in the period 600 to 700 AD during the expansion of the Islamic Caliphate. 127. Many centuries later, both world wars saw fighting in the desert. In the First World War, the Ottoman Turks were engaged with the British Regular Army in a campaign that spanned the Arabian Peninsula. The Turks were defeated by the British, who had the backing of irregular Arab forces that were seeking to revolt against the Turks in the Hijaz, made famous in T. E. Lawrence's book Seven Pillars of Wisdom. 128. 129. In the Second World War, the Western Desert Campaign began in Italian Libya. Warfare in the desert offered great scope for tacticians to use the large open spaces without the distractions of casualties among civilian populations. Tanks and armored vehicles were able to travel large distances unimpeded, and landmines were laid in large numbers. However, the size and harshness of the terrain meant that all supplies needed to be brought in from great distances. The victors in a battle would advance and their supply chain would necessarily become longer, while the defeated army could retreat, regroup and resupply. For these reasons, The front line moved back and forth through hundreds of kilometers as each side lost and regained momentum. 130. Its most easterly point was at El Alamein in Egypt, where the Allies decisively defeated Axis forces in 1942. 131. In culture. Drawing of Marco Polo disembarking from ship and entering castle with camels. Marco Polo arriving in a desert land with camels. 14th century miniature from Million. The desert is generally thought of as a barren and empty landscape. It has been portrayed by writers, filmmakers, philosophers, artists and critics as a place of extremes, a metaphor for anything from death, war or religion to the primitive past or the desolate future. 132. There is an extensive literature on the subject of deserts. 107. An early historical account is that of Marco Polo, c. 1254-1324, who traveled through Central Asia to China, crossing a number of deserts in his 24-year trek. 133. Some accounts give vivid descriptions of desert conditions, though often accounts of journeys across deserts are interwoven with reflection, as is the case in Charles Montague Doughty's major work, Travels in Arabia de Sitar, 1888. 134. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry described both his flying and the desert in Wind, Sand and Stars, 135, and Gertrude Bell travelled extensively in the Arabian desert in the early part of the 20th century, becoming an expert on the subject, writing books and advising the British government on dealing with the Arabs. 136. Another woman explorer was Freya Stark, who travelled alone in the Middle East, visiting Turkey, Arabia, Yemen, Syria, Persia and Afghanistan, writing over 20 books on her experiences. 137. The German naturalist A. George spent several years living in deserts, recording his experiences and research in his book, In the Deserts of This Earth. 138. The American poet Robert Frost expressed his bleak thoughts in his poem, Desert Places, which ends with stanza, they cannot scare me with their empty spaces / between stars on stars where no human race see / I have it in me so much nearer home / to scare myself with my own desert places. 139. Deserts on other planets. View of Martian deserts showing Rockfield to the horizon. View of the Martian desert seen by robotic rover Spirit in 2004. Mars is the only other planet in the solar system besides Earth on which deserts have been identified. 140. Despite its low surface atmospheric pressure, only 1/100 of that of Earth, the patterns of atmospheric circulation on Mars have formed a sea of circumpolar sand more than 5 million km to 1.9 million square mi in the area, larger than most deserts on Earth. The Martian deserts principally consist of dunes in the form of half-moons in flat areas near the permanent polar ice caps in the north of the planet. The smaller dune fields occupy the bottom of many of the craters situated in the Martian polar regions. 141. Examination of the surface of rocks by laser beamed from the Mars Exploration Rover have shown a surface film that resembles the desert varnish found on Earth, although it might just be surface dust. 142. The surface of Titan, a moon of Saturn, also has a desert-like surface with dune seas. 143. See also. Icon. Geography Portal, World Portal. Aridification. Arid Lands Information Network. Desert greening. Desertification. Deserts of